Hello and welcome to today's webinar, Action Steps Homeowners Can Take to Use Less Energy. I want to start off saying thank you to today's event partners, Focus on Energy, Midwest Renewable Energy Association, Renew Wisconsin, the Vernon County Energy District, Wisconsin Eco-Latinos, Wisconsin Conservation Energy Forum, and the Wisconsin Energy Institute at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Today's webinar is being recorded and a version of it will be posted to YouTube for public viewing. I also want to acknowledge today's webinar support from Richard Stork of CUB, as well as Evolution Marketing. Lisa will collect questions for Q&A at the end. If you have technical questions or questions that you don't want shared with everyone here, please send them directly to Lisa Giesenbauer in the chat and include your contact information. She will make sure either a CUB staff person or one of our speakers will follow up with you to answer your question. We have enabled the closed captioning on this webinar. If you want to access it, just click the box at the bottom of your screen that has the CC inside of it. I am Heather Getch. I'm a board member with the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin, CUB, and I'm here because consumer protection is critical with utility service. The money you pay in your utility should be affordable for you and your family, spent responsibly by the utility, and result in reliable service. CUB represents all of us in Wisconsin and advocates for all of these things. If you're not a member and you think this is important too, please consider supporting our work and become a member today. With that, who is CUB? For CUB's role, CUB is Wisconsin's consumer advocate for residential and small business customers. We are the nation's oldest CUB. There are other CUBs throughout the U.S. We were founded in 1979, created by the legislature. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit. Our job is to advocate for consumer protection, affordability, fairness, and safe and reliable utility service. You can learn more and find membership info at cubwi.org. With that, I'd like to introduce our panelists. I'm excited to bring to you today Tom Content, the Executive Director of CUB, Christina Carvajal, Executive Director with Wisconsin Eco-Latinos, and Chad Liabley, Southwest Regional Manager with Focus on Energy. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom to get us started.
Thank you, Heather. And I wanted to welcome everybody today and thank you for attending. Wanted to talk a little bit about energy cost pressures that are affecting us at this time, and a little bit more about CUB before we do that. So CUB was founded in 1979. And as Heather mentioned, and we are there to basically provide balance where energy decisions are made, where the utilities have a fiduciary responsibility to their shareholders to put their best foot forward at the Public Service Commission for their shareholders. And we are there to level the playing field and represent the customers in that arena. And CUB, our work has actually saved customers more than $3.6 billion just since 2006. And we get involved in rate cases involving the major utilities, and we also get involved in construction cases as well. We serve both residential and small business customers, and we have residential and small business membership programs. And our two areas of focus, the primary one is regulatory, and the other one is education and outreach, and that's what this webinar series is about. So energy cost pressures. So if you look at the green line is the challenging environment we're in right now. If you compare the green one to the red one is where we were at this time last year, and the green one is this year, and it shows that the natural gas price is up sharply, and it's up even more from 2 years ago. And the forecast, which is the dotted lines on this slide, show that the prices are expected to remain elevated through the winter heating season. So one of the challenges we have this year is is the natural gas prices, whether it's from the just inflation, the supply chain issues of the world economy, the war in Ukraine, and the impact on energy over the energy and natural gas prices globally. The fact that we're exporting more natural gas, we have a lot of different factors that are kind of conspiring against us, if you will, when it comes to natural gas. Next slide, please. And so actually our Wisconsin utilities have not yet put out any forecast for the winter heating season, but CUB wanted people to be aware because it isn't looking good. And I think it's one of the reasons we want to spotlight steps you can take to save energy as this winter, sooner rather than later. And here's why. 2 years, this is a national estimate for this winter that a typical household will be paying over $950 if they heat with natural gas for the winter heating season. And so that is more than $200 more than last winter and nearly $400 higher than the winter before. And I know there are folks across Wisconsin who still use heating oil. Those prices are actually going up as well. And prices of propane, which they had a bigger jump last winter than is forecast this winter. But even for somebody who heats with propane, this winter you're looking at an increase of about over $200, almost $250. So this is natural gas prices is something that the commodity costs that we pay there's very little we can control on that. But that's why taking steps to save energy can really make a difference. Next slide, please. So if we're looking at on the electric side of our utility bills, we've seen that our costs for our electric utilities rank high among Midwest utilities. The chart the chart with yellow in it shows that there are some Wisconsin utilities, including We Energies, MG&E, and Northern States Power that are among the higher ranked electricity rates for residential customers. And in the middle, you can see for a typical We Energies customer, how the costs have changed. It did flatten out in more recent years, but if you look over the long term, back to before the big building boom of power plants and of coal plants and natural gas plants, now they're shifting to solar and other technologies as well. But if you look at the blue dot, you can see that's where inflation, that's where our rates would have been if they'd only risen at the level of inflation basically since 2000 or 2001. But then instead, they've actually raised at almost double that, twice that clip. And more could be coming. And this is where CUB's involvement is so critical. And this is where we really focus our efforts. As I said, CUB can't control. Nobody can control the commodity price of natural gas, but on the electric rates, that is where the Public Service Commission has more leverage, and that is where we spend a lot of our focus, our regulatory team's focus. And we have several price increases pending in the range of 9% for 2023. The CUB is working on those cases right now. We're trying to focus on reining in high utility profits that are higher than the national average. In those cases. So that's kind of a quick overview of some of the cost pressures that folks are facing right now. And I'll be back later during the Q&A. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. Now we'll hand it over to Chad.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chad Lively, and I'm one of the regional managers for insulation and air sealing at Focus on Energy. We can go ahead and move forward on the next slide. So real briefly, if you're not familiar with us, Focus on Energy partners with Wisconsin utility companies to provide energy efficiency and renewable energy incentives. Since 2001, we have worked with eligible residents and businesses to install energy efficiency and renewable energy projects. So we're part and parcel for a lot of the solar projects that you hear about in the news. We provide financial incentives, education, information, and other resources to encourage participation that leads to increased savings and reduced utility bills. So it's really about submitting savings to the DOE and helping enhance energy efficiency for homeowners and residents in Wisconsin. Next slide, please. Okay, so one of the things that I was asked to present today are ways that you guys can save in your home that are easy and low cost, and things you can implement and do yourself. One of the things you can do if you have a domestic hot water heater, and it can be electric or gas, you can buy these blankets over at Home Depot that wrap around your water heater, and they'll help save on the heating costs. You can also use something called a kilowatt. Now that's going to be the middle picture there. It's really easy to do. You just plug it into a light socket and then plug whatever you want into the device, and it will tell you how much energy it uses. This is useful because it can show you some things that, surprisingly use a lot more energy than you might think. I'll give you a good example on the next one. These little flip switches that we provide at Focus and that you can buy other places. They're just quick shutoff switches, and you can see in the lower right-hand picture, it's just a really easy little turn of the button, push of the button to turn it off. I use this on my coffee pot because when I got solar installed, it really showed me just how much that coffee pot was using, and it was quite a bit. So in between coffee cups, I just switch it off and it stops heating that water constantly. So that's been a really useful device for me. And the great part is the graph that tracked it on my solar app was what educated me on it. So nice little device there. Also, we used to all do these younger years, times past, for Christmas tree lights. Some people don't now because the LEDs are so efficient, but don't forget about timers. Timers are great to take advantage of, and they're ubiquitous. You can buy them anywhere: Menards, Home Depot, big box stores, hardware stores, Amazon. Consider using them. A good example might be some of you have little mini hot water heaters under your sink for tea and such. Well, you're really only going to use that for a few hours in the morning, maybe, or a few hours in the evening. That might be a great place to have a timer. And some of the newer timers, they're really easy to set. You can have them turn off and on multiple times a day. So that's a great little solution for you. Next slide. All right, a couple more things you can do. In addition to the hot water blanket, you can use hot water heater line insulation. And you see at the top that picture with the little black tubes. Real easy to use. You just put it around the hot water lines coming off your hot water heater. Not too close to the burner if you've got a naturally drafting natural gas water heater. If it's electric, you can get right up to the unit itself, but you want to put those on your hot water heater lines as far as you can reach, and about the first 3 feet of your cold lines. We also have things out there that are vast improvements over what you've seen in the past. So that cylinder looking thing, that's a dryer vent. That's an energy efficient dryer vent. And the top flips open, kind of like a pan that's letting steam out. And that's when it's working. And when it's not functioning, that closes up. So you're not going to get that cold air coming right back into your house and into your dryer. If any of you, so I'm sure some of you have probably experienced in the wintertime, that can really let in a lot of cold air with the old flap types that get all clogged up with lint. Then we have something called a draft blocker, which is similar. That's the silver circular device you see in the middle of the screen. Imagine if that circle inside flapped open like a butterfly. That's essentially all that does. And that's useful for people who have ovens and stovetops that vent to the outside with a nice big metal vent that lets cold air in. That stops the wind from coming back in again. There's things like chimney pillows. That picture you see, the almost like a hot dog looking shape with the tube sticking down. You insert that up into the chimney and just inflate it. And the tube is there sticking down so that people know it's there, so they don't accidentally start a fire the next year when it's in there. But that stops your drafts from coming right down the chimney and works really well in the summer. And it's just as important in the summer because that hot air likes to creep down into your house. And the bottom picture these are window inserts. They're sort of like interior storm windows, but they're just a nice piece of plastic acrylic that's see-through that slips into place between these cushiony foam strips that go on the outer frame of your window. And that's sort of a newer product that's just been really great, really, really successful. You can Google that or reach out to me. I'll show you how to get a hold of that. TV settings, we all have smart TVs. Set that setting to shut off after an hour or two. A lot of us like to fall asleep in front of the TV at night. That's a great option. Check out the smart home options in the big box stores. There's a section there now in Menards, Home Depot, all of them. Just browse through them and familiarize yourself. There are so many great options. It goes way beyond the Ring doorbell we've all heard about. And look at baticdoor.com. Google the Inflation Reduction Act, which is putting forth a lot of money in the next year, particularly for heat pumps. I believe it's somewhere between $5,000 and $8,000. So you definitely want to take advantage of that. There's also a DOE checklist that I think you'd all be interested in. We can go to the next page. And, next page. Okay, let's go back a page. So I'm sorry that that checklist seems to have been not included. That's my fault, but Lisa did put it in the chat. If you Google DOE checklist, you'll find that quite easily. And it's a very nice long document that shows what you can do daily, annually, weekly, and monthly in your home to save energy. So that's a really useful document. And we'll make sure you guys all have access to that checklist. I must have not put that in there yesterday when I sent the slides in. So my name is Chad Lively. I'm with Focus on Energy. My direct number is 608-287-9659. I'm the insulation and air sealing contact for Focus on Energy here on the Madison and surrounding area for about 2 hours in any direction. And if you have questions, give me a call. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chad. I am personally very interested in those window inserts, and I'll be hitting you up for that later. And at the end, we are going to come back and we have your checklist as one of our things you can do.
Okay, great.
So don't worry, we have it, but it's not till later.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Up next, I want to hand it off to Christina.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. My name is Cristina Carvajal. I'm the Executive Director of Wisconsin Ecolatinos. I want to tell you a little bit about our organization first. I have been an environmental steward for a long time, and I've been involved with environmental organizations. And I noticed that there was very little participation from Latinos in these organizations, and I found myself in the position where I could help. So I founded Wisconsin Ecolatinos about 2 years ago. Our mission is to engage the Latino community in climate change action, sustainability, and environmental conservation, environmental justice. About last year, the summer last year, we were invited. We had the opportunity to facilitate a workshop that was about sustainability and energy efficiency. This workshop was developed by the Latino Academy of Workforce Development and Sustaining. In there, we worked with a group of about 10 Latino women. They were all Spanish-speaking. And we learned about what was climate change, what was sustainability. Many of them had never heard the word or the definition of sustainability. We learned about water quality, air quality, how to protect our families from pollution. Their interest was amazing. This was a remarkable group of women. They had jobs. They have little kids. They still took about 4 hours every week during the summer to learn about climate change and how to take action, how to reduce our carbon footprint. They went on to teach their families and their neighbors about energy efficiency, how to get their focus on energy saving packs, for example. This definitely was an amazing program. We were just astounded by the interest people wants to learn. People want to take action. And there are many simple actions that we can take to reduce energy consumption. And I have a few recommendations for you. And we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So if you can see in this graph, it shows how American families spend energy in their houses. Air conditioning and space heating, water heating takes, a big portion of it, as well as lighting, TV, clothes dryers, and refrigerators. So we have a few recommendations that you can, few actions that you can take to reduce energy consumption on these areas. We can go to the next slide. So simple actions, big savings will reduce greenhouse emissions. We recommend energy efficient appliances, replacing oil inefficient appliances, and doing regular maintenance can save from 10 to 15% of energy. You can choose Energy Star certified appliances, and if you go to the website, energystar.gov, you can find specific recommendations for specific products that are energy efficient. You can also find rebates and tax credits on the purchase of or upgrade of these appliances. You can go there and you can enter your zip code, and it will just show you what kind of rebate or tax credit you could have. As you could see in the graph, the water heater also accounts for 14% of household energy use. Consider upgrading if your water heater is more than 12 years old, it's making noises, and upgrade to a high efficiency heat pump water heater. It uses 70% less energy than a standard model. Next slide, please. Refrigerators are also big consumers of energy. You can do maintenance to reduce energy consumption and efficiency, vacuum fan and condenser coils on the back or bottom of refrigerators, check door seals for tightness and replace the ones that are damaged, place the refrigerator in a cool place, unplug that second refrigerator, replace, this one is big one, unplugging the second refrigerator. I mention it because many families upgrade their fridge to a new efficient refrigerator, and then they put the old one in the basement or the garage. And that's a big energy waste usually, because people sometimes they don't use that second refrigerator. Consider replacing your old inefficient refrigerator for an Energy Star certified model with a lower greenhouse warming potential refrigerant. And remember that side-by-side refrigerators use 25% more energy than other models. Of course, dryers also surprisingly consume a lot of energy, about 5% of the household energy use. We recommend not to over-dry clothes, clean the lint trap before every load, and if you can dry full loads and reduce drying time for partial loads. And you can wash your laundry with cold water whenever possible, and wash full loads. This will reduce energy and water as well. Next, please. As we mentioned, heating and air conditioning can take up to 30% of the household energy use. We recommend maintenance of the equipment. You can change filters every 3 months, especially if there are allergies in the family. It's going to keep the indoor air quality up to standard in your home. Tune up your equipment every year. Clean indoor and outdoor coils before warm weather starts, and consider replacing if your home has humidity problems or rooms that can never get cold or comfortable, never to get comfortable. Your equipment needs frequent repairs and your energy bill is going up. Your cooling equipment is more than 10 years. Your furnace or boiler is more than 15 years. These are guidelines for tells you that it's time to replace or upgrade your equipment. and always consider upgrading to Energy Star certified heat pump. There is always more. If you want more information, if you want more detailed information on how to reduce energy throughout your home, you can do a home energy assessment through the Energy Star Home Advisor in the webpage energystar.gov. And also you can hire a professional home energy audit service, as always. These are all the recommendations that we have for today. Thank you.
This is all great information. So we started off talking about costs and how costs are going to increase. Then we went into some quick tips about things we can do. And we talked about sort of the mobilization that you were able to do, Christina, bringing people together to really influence each other's behavior in their families and their homes. One question that we had come through, Chad, I think this is for you to answer, the chimney pillow. Could a chimney pillow be used in a chimney that is no longer venting the furnace due to a newer furnace that vents directly to the outside?
Could a chimney pillow be used? One more time?
Could a chimney pillow be used in a chimney that's no longer venting the furnace due to a newer furnace that vents directly to the outside? So it sounds like maybe the chimney is still potentially open to leaks, but not directly connected to the furnace.
Right. Yeah. So the chimney pillows are for the larger fireplaces that have typically just a lever that close the damper that go up into the chimney. You're not going to use these for something like a chimney access area that has hot metal flues going up through it. That would most likely melt the pillow itself. You wouldn't want to do that. So this is pretty much for your typical standard wood fireplace, wood burning fireplace, not a natural gas fireplace, not a chimney chase, a chimney run. Yeah. Good question though. Now that doesn't mean there aren't some out there. There may be, I'm not aware of them. The stuff is changing all the time. A Google search might be your friend there, but I'm not aware of them.
Thanks, Chad. One thing I want to mention, I'm a renter, so I have maybe less influence on the property as a whole, but a lot of the things Christina talked through and what Chad talked through, I've been able to educate myself so that when it comes time to replace things or to upgrade stuff or just do maintenance on the property, I'm able to pass along that information to my property manager. And I've found that I'm often educating him on things that we can do to reduce the overall costs on the property. And I've found that they are very interested to hear that. So if you are a renter, don't ignore these things. Recently, I was able to get the fridge upgraded because it was so old and breaking. And what we found was much more energy efficient. When we replaced the furnace in our unit, we were able to do something far more efficient. The same with the toilet and a lot of other utility-based things that does help the property overall. So just keep that in mind. Christina, one thing I wanted to ask you, because you talked about the wonderful program you were able to do with all of those women. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What kind of influence did that have on the community? And also, if we're all thinking about, wow, I would love to do that in my neighborhood, what are some first steps that we could do to try to organize ourselves?
Yeah, definitely. So my experience, we were very surprised that the women were the one that were interested in the program, first of all. And we, at the beginning, we did have some gentlemen join, but they dropped later on, like 3 weeks later. They probably didn't think they had the time. But women were very interested, and this tell us how I think the leadership of women, empowering women in the community with knowledge can go a long way. I think, if a community wants to run a program like this, you could start by reaching out to nonprofit organizations, probably the city offices, telling them, we want to create a program to empower our families to take action against climate change or energy, consumption.
Thanks, Christina. Next, I want to move on to, something that we've all been hearing a lot about. It's the Inflation Reduction Act. I feel like it comes up every conversation I have recently because there's so much money coming down the pike that's going to be available for homeowners, for businesses, all sorts of people. If Lisa hasn't shared it yet, in my day job, I work at the U.S. Green Building Council, and we have PDF information that really breaks down sort of what's coming. Tom recently did a blog, and Tom, I want to ask you to talk a little bit about that and what you're seeing. Also want to mention, I think at this point, we're all just sort of waiting to hear, like, how is the money going to come to our state? How is it going to be allocated and allowed for, homeowners and business owners to access? Tom, can you comment a bit about that?
Sure. So yeah, there was actually $370 billion of spending that's earmarked toward climate resilience and energy steps toward the energy transition. Some of that is targeted toward utilities and kind of the bigger transition we're seeing on the power grid. But some of it is actually, a lot of it is actually going to be targeted toward homeowners and residential multifamily units, low-income neighbor communities. We're going to see a lot of different things come through. Some of the biggest things that are in there are the tax credits for energy storage, or for a home battery system, or for a battery system for the business. There'll be a 30% tax credit for that. Now, the tax credits for solar have been extended for 10 years, and then even on everything as simple as Christina mentioned, get an energy assessment, which is actually there's a focus on energy list on their website of the vendors that provide those. They're going to be either rebates or tax credits for getting the assessment and for insulating, for taking steps to shore up the energy efficiency of your home. And some of the things we're most excited about are the heat pumps and some of the incentives we're going to be seeing there. It does have to go through a process because each state has to actually implement the program, set up programs so that the money gets dispersed in an efficient way. And so we're kind of in a wait and see mode on that. But I think there's a lot of exciting stuff to come there.
Thanks, Tom. Can you also talk a little bit about some of the work that CUB is doing right now, some of the rate cases and other things that are just about to happen that you're working on so diligently this week?
Sure. In the next hour or so, actually, our team is going to be making filings with the Public Service Commission in the Wisconsin Public Service rate case, which is the Green Bay utility. And then tomorrow we'll be making more filings in the We Energy's rate case. And so those are big cases, and we're focused on trying to bring down the size of the increase that was proposed. And our team, we have an economist who we hired last year, who's an experienced economist who's our regulatory strategist, and he's presenting really powerful arguments to the state that show that the utilities profits, the double-digit profits they're getting, are things that have to come down. They're not justified, and they need to come down. And our profits for our utilities have been higher than the national average for too long, and so that's really a core focus. And we're also concerned when they retire the coal plants, that the coal plants that are on the way out, that utilities shouldn't be able to keep profiting from them for decades or more after they're shut down. So that's a big focus for us. We want to see lower costs for customers there too. So there's a lot of different technical arguments that we're making, but there are also going to be opportunities for public comment. There's a public comments are being accepted on the PSC website, and we're waiting any time now. We're hoping that a time and a place for an in-person public hearing will be scheduled. And people can stay tuned to the cubwi.org/blog. So because we'll be updating and circulating on social media the time and place for those public hearings once they're announced. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom. We definitely need more people telling their story, talking about why this is important. So please watch for that. And if you haven't noticed, Lisa's been sharing a lot of information in the chat. I also wanted to note that all of that information will be shared in the follow-up after the session is over. So if there's anything that flew by and you missed it, there'll be another opportunity to access it. This next question is for Chad and Christina, thinking about behavior, right? And whose job is it to do energy management? Because I think there's two sides to it, right? There's what the utility needs to do as far as reliability, making sure infrastructure is updated and things are happening the way they need to. But there's also us on our side, and that's what we're talking about today. But can you also talk about, when you're talking out in the community, people are approaching you, what are like the top things that people are most concerned about or maybe most confused about when you talk with them?
Well, I can tell you from my experience, people want to do something, they want to, they're interested in taking action. But many people, what I found from our community, they don't know where to start. And one of our missions, one of Wisconsin Eco Latinos' mission is to do outreach, go to our community and give them the information and resources on how to take action. From the experience of last year's workshop, we could tell empowering women with knowledge goes a long way. Women are the family educators. Most of the time they make the decisions in their household. So I think empowering women, and especially in the Latino community, goes a long way. This is, I've been, surprised and amazed how, their response, their interest on learning and, asking, what can we do? We can do, how can we reduce our carbon footprint? And they, people will respond. And it's everyone's responsibility for sure. We can all do a little bit at a time. And then what I found out also that is very important is understanding the reason behind, right? When people understand the reasons behind a certain, request, why do I need to do this, then it's, the actions are going to be different.
And I guess I'll discuss. So dealing with the insulation and air sealing services that focus on energy, I tend to get a lot of questions when I'm out doing outreach on, how do I do this? How do I go about, like Christina mentioned, where do I start with making my home more energy efficient? Right now, one of the big places is heat pumps because of the technology. They're working down to -20 degrees, which is great. I lived on the East Coast. We had them out there 20, 30 years ago, but it didn't really get that cold where I was in DC. Now, it's going to be a real big thing coming up here in Wisconsin because that technology is there. And there's a lot of money for it in the Inflation Reduction Act. I often will advise my homeowner inquiries to have a home energy assessment done and then give them advice on how to go about finding a good contractor to do the installation work and give them sort of an overall view of, hey, before you do all of this stuff, really, the first thing you want to do is make that home more energy efficient. Then you want to go solar because solar isn't cheap, although it's far less than it used to be. Making that home more energy efficient means having to purchase less solar ultimately too. So And each house is unique. A house can be built on one side of the street one day, the same exact house built on the other side of the street by the same builder the next day, and they're both still going to have their unique energy efficiency problems. It's just the way it works. So, but that's probably the main thing that I'm asked all the time is, how do I start? How do I start? And where do I go from here? Show me the map to efficiency. And I'm always happy to help. It's a great thing to be part of.
How do I get started? That's the common theme here. The next thing I want to ask is for everyone. What's one thing that you did not talk about in your presentation, but you wanted to include, but because we're sticking to our time, other than the recommendations you want to make, what's something else related to this topic that you want to make sure is shared?
I'll start with that, and I just want to. We posted on the Cub blog earlier this week that the warning, the kind of alert about heating costs, and I was thinking, how much is this going to resonate when it's still 80 degrees out? But look at the temperatures today, and it's a little different, and it's going to be in the 40s across most of the state now. So I think this is the time where if you don't know where to start, one thing you can do is walk around the parts of the house that you don't usually walk around, and check out your basement, check out your attic. How drafty is it? If one of the things that you don't have to have a blower door test to know if you're uncomfortable in certain rooms versus another, in one room versus another. And if there is that big variance between those, that shows that you're probably a candidate for upgrading your efficiency. And as Chad said, that's just so important. If solar is kind of the in vogue right now, but really taking steps to make your home more comfortable and more efficient is kind of like the blocking and tackling of addressing climate change and reducing your energy costs at home.
I like that, Tom, just using sort of a self-assessment of your home and how are you feeling in each room. That reminds me that I am about to argue to get my doors replaced, front and back door, because in winter, I definitely feel the air coming through and it is uncomfortable. Christina and Chad, what's one other thing that you haven't talked about yet that you want to make sure you can communicate?
We were talking about behavior, and yes, sometimes we need to change our behavior. It is true, our home should be comfortable, right? Reasonable, range of, in summer and winter. But then again, sometimes people is used to having a house that is really, really cold in the summer. And I think that thermostat, when we think about that temperature there, do we really need to put it at 70 degrees? Right? Sometimes even less, right? Sometimes people is like, you go into a place like, oh my God, this is, so cold, and it's summer. So I definitely, think it's a behavioral issue. We need to put that into our minds, that we can live with a reasonable indoor temperature in the summer, and then the same in the winter. That's it's something to put in people's mind.
Okay, I'm so glad you asked that, because there is one thing that I would love to get. I would love to get all of the installation companies in the area together and have them contribute to one big billboard that goes up on the Beltline. And if I could do that, it would say this: it's not the windows, because unfortunately, window payback is 20, 23 years. When I worked out in DC, I saw people spend, $50,000 on the guest house windows, and glass doesn't leak, and the window technology is really good. Also, windows are put in what we call a low pressure area. So your stack effect isn't trying to get air in and out of them. It's trying to get out your attic and in your basement, which is why when you insulate and air seal a house, make it more energy efficient, you always start at the top and go to the bottom. Then you worry about the walls, things like that. And we all hear the same commercial every year: old man winter's coming, it's time to replace those windows. And it's really not the case. A lot of people think if they have moisture on their windows, the windows are failing. No, you have moisture in your house and the windows are cold. You need a better bath fan. And the reason I say this with so directly is because it's a huge expense. And if people would just put $3,000, $4,000 towards insulating their attic, sometimes it's as little as $2,000, they would save money instantly. It's like giving yourself a raise. The payback on insulation is 3 to 6 years. It's really good. Whereas with windows, you're really never gonna get that payback. And if you can see out the side of your sash, you can see rain and sunlight and all that. Yeah, you need to replace those windows. But in general, energy efficiency, insulation, air sealing, solar, residential turbines, which work very well now and are very quiet. Those are all really great ways to go. Those are your priorities when trying to save money, make your house more comfortable, and just be energy efficient, reduce your carbon footprint. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah, related to that, each of you, what's the number one thing that you do in your home when you're prepping for winter? When you think about winter prep, what's the one thing that is top of your mind for you?
I'll start. I think it's really, I mean, it's simple, but it was already starting this morning because it's every day it's been, let's keep the sun out because of how warm it's been. And today and this morning it just flipped. Like, okay, let's let the sun in. I mean, take advantage of that. You don't have to have solar panels to take advantage of the power of the sun. And I think that's just a simple thing that actually makes a big difference. Use curtains on those really sunny rooms in the summer, but open those rooms up if you're going to be in them in the winter, kind of thing.
I would say, remember maintenance. The equipment needs maintenance before winter starts. By the time that winter, is cold, then it's going to be very difficult to find a contractor, and then you're gonna have a hard time, there. So maintenance is important.
Yeah, there's a couple of things I do every year when it starts to get cold. One, I put the storm windows down because they're open all year. So that has an instant effect. And two, typically right after the start of your furnace ductwork, there's a little flap, a little opening. And I close that in the summer because I want the cold air to reach as high as it can get and work its way down my house. I open it in the wintertime because I do want some ambient heating in my basement. When you heat up all that brickwork and the subfloor structure, you've got kind of a heat mass, something that would take a long time to get really cold or really hot. It wants to stay at the temperature it's at. And in the wintertime, that can help keep your temperature a little more stable, and your floors won't be as cold either. So that's more comfortable. Those are the two things I do. And of course, like Christina said, you got to check that air filter on your furnace. You don't have to have any fancy number. It doesn't have to be a MERV 9, 10, or 20. A MERV 3 is just fine. It's going to remove most of the particles, but still allow that airflow to move through efficiently, which is what you want. And that can help with the cost of gas, propane, and all that all those expenses.
Mm-hmm. Great. So now I'm going to ask Rich to bring the slides back up because each of you has a sort of closing resource for all of our attendees, some take-home actions. So I'm going to let Rich go forward and have you talk through your final thoughts. Rich, can you move forward one? Whoop. There we go. So I think Christina, Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as I mentioned, there are very little changes that we can make that can, reduce energy consumption. So I call them simple actions, big savings. Reduce greenhouse emissions. Changing the light bulbs, using LED lights, it's a huge improvement. As you can see, the consumption is very different, from LED to the old halogen light bulbs. Stop air leaks by installing a door sweep. There is, the door that goes from the garage to the home. Usually, people just don't pay much attention to it, and most of the time, has these gaps. I always say you will leave a water faucet open. This is equivalent with, like your air and energy. Using a smart thermostat, it will definitely improve the comfort of your house, and it would reduce energy consumption. And of course, the power strip. Power strips are great for home offices and electronics, where you can just turn them off and stop, waste of energy when you're not using them.
Okay, so a couple things that you can do with your utility bills. So first thing is time of use rates. And so back in the day, it used to be with the old phone bills that you would get nights and weekends free. And it's not like it's free, but on a time of use rates, your nights and weekend electric rates are discounted. It's higher on weekdays. But if you should look at your energy use patterns, and if you can shift your dishwashing and your laundry to nights and weekends, then you could actually save considerably through a time of use rates. Cub has done some analysis and worked with some of the utility data to see that we think that a lot of time of use rates are available for everybody, but too few people are taking advantage of it. It's something that really could save people money. And on the right, you can see the budget billing. So that is important just because of the roller coaster ride with the way bills hit in the summer and the winter. So budget billing actually, and some utilities call it different things like the average payment plan, but that smooths out those peaks, and that's important too. And then take advantage of freebies. Focus on Energy sends out free energy packs, and they're available to any utility customer of a utility that participates in Focus. So that's all the major utilities in the state. And on their website, which you can see the link here, there's actually a choice of 6 different options you can pick, whether it's for saving. They've got low flow shower heads, they've got LED light bulbs, they've got all sorts of options for you there. But it's free to anybody, and it's actually something that, again, more people should take advantage of, because it's who doesn't want something that's free, right? Thanks.
Okay, so, can anybody hear me? I just got a message saying I need to unmute myself. Yeah, okay. So as I mentioned, the Federal Emergency Management Program offers the following checklist. There's actually several of them to help you conserve energy. So we have the link right there in the center of the screen, but as I described earlier, it's a lengthy document. It was far too lengthy to put in this slide. Goes down quite a few pages, and to reiterate, it tells you what you can do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and even annually. And it gets into some pretty good levels, pretty complex levels of efficiency. So some very easy, quick fixes in there, and some more advanced ideas that will help you make your house more energy efficient. So that's a great checklist. They do update it from time to time, so it's a good one to keep checking in on. And well, there's the link for you if you need it, and I believe it's been included in our chat as well. So
Great. Thank you so much, Chad, Tom, and Christina. I think this was incredibly useful information. And of course, this will all be included in the follow-up. So I also want to thank our promotional partners who helped make today possible. Thank you to all of our listeners who joined us today. We have a couple more resources in case you missed the previous programs. There's a blog and webinars set up for what you need to know, what to know about where energy costs are going and setting the stage for Wisconsin's clean energy transition. You can find those posted to Cub's YouTube page, as well as the blog site. Cub consumer resources are in English and Spanish available to you. Next slide, Rich. Thank you. We have some small business webinars coming up during Energy Awareness Month on October 6th. What does Wisconsin's clean energy transition mean for my business? On the 13th, steps your business can take to manage energy costs. And on the 20th, the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council will be talking about solar installer and a business showcase. There's a flyer for this. If you need to use that with your employer, we'll include that in the follow-up. And I believe Lisa put that flyer in the chat just now. Part of our mission is to help educate residents, ratepayers, and Wisconsin consumers. So today's program was one of 3 educational offerings this summer for residential customers. Please help us share the business webinars. And thank you so much for spending the past hour with us. This is the end of today's event, and I hope you have a great afternoon.